Welcome to this explainer. We usually look at a garden and just see, well, pretty colors. But today, we're diving into something wild. We're going to uncover how a simple flower actually carries millennia of magical, social, and spiritual weight. The history of botany is literally laced with secret codes, esoteric rituals, and the occult. So we're going to explore deep mythology, ancient pagan healing practices, and the absolutely profound ways humanity has tried to harness the power of the natural world. Let's get right into it.
To really understand this, we have to start with the esoteric. Take the Hellenian herb, or Inula helenium. Its origins are steeped in pure mythology. Legend says this magical plant sprang directly from the tears of Helen of Troy, the woman whose beauty launched 1,000 ships. The story goes that after her tragic death, this plant grew right where she died, and people believed it carried the power to cure deadly snake bites. So, right away, this establishes that to ancient minds, plants weren't just pretty to look at. They were powerful magical tools governing life, death, and healing.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be hitting myths, magic, and medicine, gardens of the ancients, sacred rituals and offerings, an incredible East meets West cultural divide, the language of flowers, and finally, cultivating universal harmony.
All right, part 1. Myths, magic, and medicine. Let's look at the esoteric roots.
Think about this for a second. Nature's medicine cabinet was basically also its poison chest. Imagine the fluttering, rapid heartbeat and intense nausea you'd get from ingesting belladonna, the deadly nightshade. But folks relied on these plants just as heavily for spiritual protection as they did for their physical effects. People used to burn sweet, smoky bags of juniper and thyme right in their fireplaces. Why? Well, they actually believed evil spirits and witches used chimneys to enter homes, so these herbs blocked them out and supposedly even warded off the plague. And we can't forget the famous mandrake root. This plant was considered so magically powerful that 16th century crooks literally counterfeited it. They were carving beetroots and selling them to unsuspecting buyers. No way, right?
But who actually held the keys to all this botanical knowledge? For centuries, it was the village wise women. They possessed these vast, generations-old understandings of medicinal herbs, including plants used to control fertility. But tragically, these women were heavily targeted and burned at the stake during the Inquisition witch hunts. The suppression of these women nearly wiped out indigenous, pagan, earth-based spiritualities and a massive amount of crucial botanical healing knowledge right along with them.
Moving on to part 2, Gardens of the Ancients. Let's head over to Mesopotamia and Egypt.
Now, notice how ancient rulers viewed these blooms. What we're looking at here is an ancient Assyrian ruler, King Sargon, sacrificing a goat. But look closely at his right hand. He's holding a sacred flower. It shows us that to these ancient rulers, the flower was just as potent and important as the blood sacrifice itself when they were communicating with the divine.
We also see this brilliant aesthetic evolution happening over in ancient Egypt. There's this stark contrast between the highly mechanical, engineered aesthetic of an Egyptian garden, complete with a shadoof, which was a lever system gardeners used to draw water, and the profound sacred geometry of the blue lotus. In mythology, the young sun god Horus is actually depicted rising directly out of the lotus flower. So the garden wasn't just agriculture, it was this evolving mythological theater for the gods.
And this scale of botanical ambition, it absolutely peaked with the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Ancient cultures like Mesopotamia and Urartu didn't just plant crops for food. King Nebuchadnezzar supposedly built this entire terraced, exotic paradise simply to comfort his homesick wife. I mean, talk about a gift! These gardens were the ultimate symbols of state power, incredible wealth, and our remarkable human ability to shape and control nature.
Part 3. Sacred Rituals and Offerings. Let's look at the true power of the bloom.
So, ancient rulers literally surrounded themselves with eternal stone flowers. This beautiful piece from King Ashurbanipal's palace is a stone carpet, carved with intricate lotus and palmette motifs. They were seamlessly blending the aesthetic beauty of plants with their sacred, protective utility. It was basically a permanent, magical garden carved right into the architecture of their daily lives.
Meanwhile, in the East, the rituals were deeply physical and incredibly vibrant. In Hindu traditions, the puja, which actually translates to a flower offering, essentially replaced animal blood sacrifices. Just imagine the sensory experience here. The heavy, intoxicating scent of jasmine, the bright bursts of yellow marigolds draped in massive garlands over statues. There was even a mysterious esoteric ritual we can call the flower oracle. Priests would place wet flowers on deity statues. If a flower fell from the right side, it was a yes from the gods. If it fell from the left, a no. Flowers were literal, physical conduits for divine communication.
Which brings us to part 4, East meets West, and a fascinating cultural divide.
Historically, early Western and Semitic traditions, including early Christianity and Islam, shifted heavily towards strict, text-based, spoken worship. They actively rejected physical idols, and by extension, flower offerings were often just dismissed as wasteful pagan luxury or inappropriate visual representations of divine creation. But, by contrast, Eastern traditions, like Hinduism and Buddhism, moved in the exact opposite direction. They fully embraced vibrant, physical worship, making flowers the absolute center of their devotion, alongside deep lotus symbolism. It's a massive historical divide in how different cultures chose to interact with the divine through the natural world.
All right, part 5, the language of flowers, secret codes and hidden desires.
So, when flowers did finally return to social prominence in Western society, they became heavily coded. This practice actually started in Middle Eastern harems, where written messages were strictly forbidden. Lovers and friends had to use plants as secret codes just to communicate. By the 19th century, this concept, known as floriography, was imported into Victorian England and it absolutely exploded across Europe. You didn't just hand someone a rose, right? A highly sophisticated secret English language of flowers developed to express forbidden love, hidden desires, and societal secrets, all right under the noses of a super strict society.
And finally, part 6, cultivating universal harmony through spiritual herbalism.
Consider this quote for a second. The boundary that separates the magic and the medicine is fake. It's not real. It's never been real. We really have to dismantle the modern binary here. In the realm of occult botany, there is absolutely no wall between a flower's aesthetic beauty, its physical medicine, and its magical power. For thousands of years, they were understood to be exactly the same thing.
Because working with plants is ultimately about holistic alignment. Historically, an herbalist understood that a plant capable of moving into your body to cool excessive physical liver heat, well, it also carried the esoteric virtue to pacify hot, fiery emotions like anger and resentment. It's all connected. The very same physical faculties that heal our bodies flow outward into our life paths, helping to heal our interpersonal relationships and our spiritual state.
So what does this all mean? It brings us to one final thought. If ancient cultures saw absolutely no difference between a plant's physical medicine and its spiritual magic, what hidden harmony are we completely missing in our own gardens today? The next time you see a flower, remember, you aren't just looking at a pretty color, you're looking at an ancient magical tool. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go out and keep exploring the magic, sitting quietly right in your own backyard.